All right, let's jump into a fascinating company today.
Okay.
We're talking AMD, Advanced Micro Devices.
Okay. Yeah.
We've got tons of research and analyst notes and financial data all about, this big question. Can AMD really challenge NVIDIA's dominance in AI? Or are they gonna stay kind of in the shadows?
Well, one thing that I think is really striking is just like the transformation that AMD has undergone in the last few years.
Yeah.
They've really shifted gears towards data centers and AI. And, it's really starting to show in their financials. Their earnings reports are quite interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, their data center business is exploding.
Yeah.
And those AI-suited GPUs are a big piece of that. And they're projecting that the market for AI accelerators is going to reach like $500 billion by 2028.
Wow.
Which is like if they get even a fraction of that market, that's huge.
Absolutely.
So to understand their potential, I mean, we need to look at kind of where they sit in the industry. AMG is one of only two companies, the other one being Intel, that has a license for the x86 architecture, right?
Right.
That's be their golden ticket in the PC and server markets.
Yeah.
But, there's this question about how long is that going to last? As software moves more and more to the cloud.
Right.
And ARM-based chips start to get more traction.
Yeah. I mean, we've already seen Apple transition completely to ARM-based chips for their Macs.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good bellwether for, where things could be going.
Could be going, yeah.
But on the other hand, AMD has this really interesting partnership with TSMC, the world's leading chip manufacturer.
Oh, yeah.
Which has really allowed them to kind of leapfrog Intel in manufacturing capabilities.
Yeah.
And that's really played a, crucial role in their recent market share gains.
It's like, having the best chef in the world in your kitchen, when you partner with TSMC. And AMD is really making the most of it, especially with this chiplet strategy.
Right.
That they've got going on.
Exactly. So for those who aren't familiar, the chiplet strategy, which AMD developed in collaboration with TSMC, is where they break down these very complex chips into smaller modular units called chiplets. And these can be manufactured separately and then assembled later, which provides incredible flexibility and efficiency.
It's a really, really smart approach.
Right.
So we've got AMD kind of leveraging its x86 legacy. It's maximizing its partnership with TSMC.
Right.
And it's riding this wave of a booming data center business.
Yeah.
But where do investors stand on all this?
Well, as always, there are two sides to every coin. The bulls are excited about AMD's recent market share gains, particularly in the PC segment, but also this enormous potential of the AI market and this belief that there is room for multiple winners,
right? Even
with a giant like NVIDIA already kind of dominating the space.
So the bulls see them as a potential disruptor, really kind of carving out their own space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the bears, they have their reservations, and they point to the possibility of Intel, potentially regaining its manufacturing edge, and kind of putting pressure on AMD's market share again. They also highlight the threat of ARM-based processors.
Yeah.
AMD's reliance on gaming console cycles, which are, a little bit unpredictable.
Yeah.
And also, this very difficult task of competing with NVIDIA's very strong software ecosystem, particularly CUD, which has become, like the standard for AI development.
Yeah.
It's a huge advantage for NVIDIA. But interestingly, Morningstar, a very well-respected investment research firm, has given AMD what they call a narrow economic moat rating, meaning that they believe that AMD has the potential to generate excess returns for at least the next 10 years.
Now, when we say economic moat, what exactly are we talking about there?
So an economic moat is essentially the competitive advantages that a company has, the things that protect its profits from being eroded by competitors. And in AMD's case, Morningstar highlights intangible assets like their, chip designs, and then the enduring, although potentially diminishing, value of that x86 license.
So it's about having this defensible position in the market, something that sets them apart.
Yeah, exactly. And while Morningstar doesn't consider AMD's gaming GPU and console chip businesses to be part of this moat, they have given AMD a fair value estimate of $160 per share.
Okay.
And they're projecting a 20% revenue compound annual growth rate from 2024 to 2028, which is largely driven by, that data center segment that we were talking about earlier.
That's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And their data center revenue trajectory is especially remarkable. I mean, potentially going from $1.7 billion in 2020 to over $36 billion in 2028.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Even capturing just a portion of that would be a major win for them.
Absolutely.
And then there's their AI GPU revenue, which has seen some pretty good upward revisions in recent projections.
Mm-hmm.
They're working to increase supply
Mm-hmm.
to meet that surging demand. But, I mean, it's important to keep things in perspective. NVIDIA is projected to generate over $100 billion in revenue just for 2024 alone.
Yeah.
So while AMD's journey in AI is just beginning, they've got a long way to go to catch up to the current leader.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of this classic David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
AMD, the contender, taking on NVIDIA, this giant.
Exactly. But, like any ambitious undertaking, there are risks.
Right.
And there are uncertainties. And NVIDIA's dominance in AI, with its powerful hardware and software ecosystem, particularly CED, that's a big challenge for AMD.
So even if they develop GPUs that are, equal to or even better than NVIDIA's, they still have to get the developers to use their platform instead of CED, which is, I mean, everybody uses CEA.
Right, yeah. It's a battle on multiple fronts. It's the hardware, it's the software, it's getting the developers. And then you have this new trend of hyperscale cloud providers like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, who are developing their own AI chips in-house.
Oh, wow.
And so this, potentially limits the market share that's available to companies like AMD and NVIDIA.
So that's a whole nother layer of complexity in this.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, we can't forget about Intel.
Right.
They could regain their manufacturing lead, and then that's going to put the pressure right back on AMD's market share in PCs and servers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then just the cyclical nature of the PC and gaming markets, that just adds this element of uncertainty to AMD's revenue and profitability.
Right.
But in the midst of all this, I'm kind of intrigued by Morningstar giving AMD this exemplary rating for their capital allocation strategy. That says something about their financial management.
It really does. And capital allocation is just how a company uses its financial resources.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's investing in research and development, making acquisitions, buying back shares, or paying dividends. And Morningstar really commended AMD's leadership, particularly CEO Lisa Su, for her strategic decisions, including the Xilinx acquisition, which has really expanded their capabilities.
Yeah, Lisa Su has, she's really considered a visionary leader in the tech world, and she's played a key role in AMD's, kind of resurgence.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's had a huge impact. And her focus on data center investments has really been, a key part of AMD's strategy. And, their use of share buybacks to return value to shareholders shows, that they're committed to financial prudence.
Yeah. So it seems like AMD has a pretty compelling story here. I mean, this incredible transformation.
Yeah.
A really strong leadership team.
Right.
A focus on these high growth areas like data centers and AI. But like we've been talking about, the path ahead is not exactly a cakewalk.
Right.
There's a lot of competition and a lot of uncertainty.
Exactly. And that really kind of brings us to a key question for investors, I think.
Okay.
Will the AI accelerator market, will it just become like this duopoly with NVIDIA and AMD?
Right.
And everybody else is just kind of like scrambling to keep up?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be more fragmented, with these hyperscaler developed chips coming into play? And, what if Intel makes a comeback?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big question. It's a really dynamic market with a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
So, based on what we see in this deep dive, like, what would you say are some of the key takeaways?
Well, I think one of the things that really stands out to me is just AMD's track record of innovation and execution.
Yeah.
Their partnership with TSMC has been a real game changer.
Yeah.
It's allowed them to, like we were talking about, really kind of leapfrog Intel in terms of manufacturing capabilities.
Right.
And their chiplet strategy is really kind of putting them at the forefront of chip design.
Yeah, their shift towards data centers and AI is also huge. I mean, it's this high growth market.
Yeah.
With like incredible potential, and they're going all in on it. I mean, their projected revenue growth in that data center segment is just remarkable.
Yeah, it is. But we have to acknowledge the competition,
Of course.
I mean, NVIDIA is the 800-pound gorilla
Right.
in the AI space. They have this mature hardware and software ecosystem. And CUDA, we were talking about CUDA, their platform, I mean, it's become the industry standard.
Yeah. But doesn't AMD have their own platform?
They do. It's called ROCm.
Okay.
And they've made progress with it.
Yeah.
But, getting developers to switch, I mean, that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. NVIDIA has such a big head start.
Yeah.
And it's hard to break that dominance.
So it sounds like software is a big battlefield in this whole AI landscape.
It really is.
Yeah. And you were talking earlier about hyperscale cloud providers.
Yeah.
Designing their own AI chips.
Right.
I mean, that could really limit the market share that's even available.
It could, yeah. And it's definitely something that investors need to factor in when they're, thinking about the long-term growth potential of companies like AMD and NVIDIA.
And of course, Intel.
Yeah.
Intel could come back.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been having their troubles, but they're Intel.
Right, exactly.
They could really shake things up.
Yeah, they've been investing heavily in trying to regain their manufacturing leadership.
Yeah.
And, they could really disrupt things if they're successful.
So it sounds like AMD is operating in a pretty complex environment.
Yeah.
Lots of moving pieces, lots of opportunities, lots of challenges.
It is. I mean, that's the nature of the tech industry.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And for investors, I mean, it's all about understanding the risk. Understanding the rewards.
Yeah.
Understanding the upside, understanding the downside.
Yeah. Well, we look at their financial performance. I mean, there's definitely some reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Their revenue growth has been impressive. Their profitability has been, expanding.
Right.
But like we've been talking about, there are these factors that could really impact their performance going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the metrics that a lot of investors look at is this economic moat.
Right.
And Morningstar's assessment that AMD has a narrow economic moat suggests that they do see some defensibility in their business.
Mm-hmm.
But you were saying that their gaming GPU and console chip businesses aren't considered part of that moat.
Right.
Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the gaming GPU market, that's a tough business.
Okay.
You've got, really fierce competition between AMD and NVIDIA. And, margins can go up and down depending on, product cycles and pricing pressure.
Right.
And the console chip business, that's really tied to the success of gaming consoles, which, are kind of cyclical,
Yeah.
So, those segments, while they bring in a lot of revenue, they're not really seen as providing that lasting competitive advantage.
Okay.
That would protect their profits over the long term.
So the moat assessment is really focusing on those factors that are more durable, less susceptible to the competition.
Right.
And for AMD, that's really their x86 license.
Yeah.
Their chip designs and their growing presence in the data center market.
Exactly.
Now, Morningstar has given them a fair value estimate of $160 per share, which is, that's quite a bit higher than where they're trading right now.
It is, yeah.
What are the main drivers of that valuation?
So their valuation is based on what's called a discounted cash flow analysis.
Okay.
And that takes into account, their projected revenue growth, profitability, and also, risk factors. Mm-hmm. And the data center segment, that's a major driver of their projected growth, as is their, push into the AI accelerator market.
So even with all the competitive pressures, Morningstar seems to think that they've got the potential to really create some value for shareholders.
Yeah, that's their assessment.
Yeah.
But like with any investment, there are risks. Things could change.
Sure.
The competitive landscape could shift.
Yeah.
New technologies could come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The economy could tank. There's always things to be aware of.
So we've talked about some of those risks. NVIDIA's dominance, the hyperscaler chips, the potential for Intel to make a comeback. Are there any other risks that investors should be thinking about?
Well, I think, one thing to keep in mind is just the cyclical nature of the semiconductor industry.
Oh, man.
Demand for chips, it goes up, it goes
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
depending on, economic conditions,
Right.
product cycles,
Right.
So if the global economy slows down, that could impact demand for PCs,
Right.
servers,
Yeah.
gaming consoles, and that would definitely affect AMD's revenue.
That's a good point. The tech industry, even though it's known for its growth, it's not immune to those cycles.
Oh, not at all. And then there's what's called execution risk.
Oh, okay.
AMD has these really ambitious plans,
Yeah.
but to actually make those happen, they have to execute.
Oh, yeah.
They can't stumble. So, any missteps in product development, manufacturing, or go-to-market strategy, that could really hurt them.
So it's not just about having the vision.
Right.
It's about being able to make it happen.
Exactly. And then, there's always the risk of just like technological disruption.
Oh,
this is an industry that's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And who knows what's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
What new technology could just like completely shake things up.
Right. It's a reminder that you can't stand still
No,
in this industry.
you can't.
You have to keep moving.
You constantly have to be innovating,
Yeah.
adapting.
Yeah. Are there any geopolitical risks to worry about?
Yeah, you have to think about that.
Okay.
The semiconductor industry is global.
Right.
You've got supply chains all over the world.
Yeah.
So things like trade tensions, political instability, even natural disasters. These could all disrupt those supply chains. And that could have a real impact on AMD's operations.
So it's a lot to consider when you're looking at a company like AMD.
It is.
There's a lot of factors at play.
The complex
Yeah.
web of interconnected things.
Yeah. But despite all that, they've shown that they can be pretty resilient.
They have.
They've made it through some tough times.
Yeah.
They've dealt with the competition.
Yeah.
They've adapted to technology shifts.
Right.
The recent performance has been pretty amazing.
It has.
And their focus on these high growth markets like data centers and AI, that really positions them well, I think.
I think so too.
For continued success.
But, like we've been saying, there are some big challenges ahead.
Right.
NVIDIA's dominance, these hyperscaler chips, Intel potentially coming back. Those are all things that could really impact AMD's, path forward.
It's a dynamic market, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the exciting part of it.
Yeah, and that's the nature of investing, right?
Right.
It's about assessing the risks, assessing the rewards,
Yeah.
making informed decisions,
Yeah.
and just being prepared for the unexpected.
And with AMD, they're definitely a company to watch.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're a force to be reckoned with
Yeah.
in the semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the next few years.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive into AMD.
Yeah.
We've talked about where they've been, where they're going, the whole landscape of the semiconductor industry. I think one of the things that really stands out to me is just how big the opportunity is in data centers and AI.
Yeah.
Their projected growth is mind-blowing.
It's really remarkable. It really shows that, they were smart.
To shift their focus to these high growth areas, and the partnership with TSMC and the chiplet strategy, that's given them a real leg up.
Yeah, it's allowed them to compete with the big guys,
Right.
Intel and Nvidia.
Yeah.
But like we've said, there's a lot of competition, and they've got some challenges. Nvidia with their AI software, and then these hyperscalers that are making their own chips.
Right. Yeah. It's a tough market.
Yeah. So Morningstar, they said that AMD has a narrow economic moat, which means they see some defensibility in their business.
Right.
Especially with that by 86 license.
Yeah.
Their chip designs.
Yeah.
And their growing presence in data centers.
Exactly.
But it's worth noting that Morningstar doesn't see the gaming GPU and console chip businesses as being part of that moat.
Right.
Which, I guess it makes sense. Those are really competitive markets.
Yeah.
And they're kind of tied to these cycles.
Yeah, they're very cyclical.
Yeah. But their capital allocation strategy, I mean, Morningstar gave them an exemplary rating on that. So they're doing something right.
They are, yeah. And that really speaks to their focus on, investing in growth.
Yeah.
Making smart acquisitions and returning value to shareholders.
Yeah. Lisa Su, I mean, she's really made a difference.
She has.
With the company.
So she's a great leader.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, where does all this leave us? What's the takeaway here for AMD?
Well, I think, they're at this really interesting point in their history.
Yeah.
They have the potential to be a major player in data centers and AI, but they also have these really significant challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, NVIDIA, these hyperscalers, Intel. I mean, it's a tough environment.
Yeah. So it really comes down to execution.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can they keep innovating? Can they adapt?
Right.
Can they make the right move? That's what's going to determine their success.
It's a really, really fascinating story.
It is.
And it's not over yet. I mean, we're just kind of, at the beginning of this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, their ambition is clear. Their ability to innovate. They've shown that they can do it.
Yeah.
And they're resilient. So, it's exciting to see what they do.
Yeah. I mean, will they become like the next Apple,
right,
or Microsoft, or will they kind of solidify their position as this strong number two? I mean, only time will tell.
Yeah.
But either way, they're definitely a company to watch.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's about it for our deep dive into AMD. Hopefully you found this helpful. Some things to think about, some perspectives.
Yeah.
This is just the start of the conversation.
Right.
Keep doing your own research. Stay up to date on what's happening in the industry and form your own opinions about where AMD is going. Thanks for joining us.